In 1994, psychologist Daniel Goleman described a phenomenon he called the amygdala hijack, a moment when an emotional stimulus, a perceived threat, a harsh word, a sudden sound, bypasses the rational analytical part of your brain and triggers a full fight or flight response before conscious thought can intervene. Research has since confirmed that threat signals reach the amygdala in approximately 12 milliseconds, 8 times faster than signals reach the prefrontal cortex. For those 12 milliseconds, and for some time afterward, you are not thinking. You are reacting. And the reaction is designed not for modern life, but for a world that hasn't existed for 10,000 years.
The amygdala is an almond-sized structure deep in the temporal lobe, part of the brain's limbic system. It is one of the most evolutionarily ancient parts of the mammalian brain. Its primary function is threat detection and emotional tagging, identifying stimuli that represent danger and triggering the physiological response needed to survive them.
The fear pathway in the brain has 2 routes. The short route goes directly from the thalamus to the amygdala, fast, crude, and automatic. It doesn't wait for the cortex to analyze context. The long route goes from the thalamus to the cortex and then to the amygdala. Slower, more accurate, capable of distinguishing between a real threat and a similar-looking harmless stimulus. In a life-threatening situation, the short route saves your life by acting before you have time to think. In a modern office, a traffic jam, or a difficult conversation, the same route triggers a reaction calibrated for a physical threat that isn't there.
When the amygdala fires, it triggers the hypothalamus, which activates the sympathetic nervous system. Adrenaline is released, heart rate increases, blood is directed to large muscle groups. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for reasoning, impulse control, and decision-making, is partially suppressed. This is the hijack. At peak arousal, you are physiologically less capable of rational thought, less capable of empathy, and more likely to say or do something you will later regret. The hijack typically lasts 20 to 30 minutes. The adrenaline takes that long to clear.
The amygdala does not learn quickly. It encodes emotional memories with extraordinary speed and retention, particularly negative ones. A single traumatic experience can create a fear response that fires reliably for years in the presence of any stimulus that resembles the original threat. This is the mechanism behind post-traumatic stress. It is also why people who have been publicly humiliated in a meeting room can feel a physiological stress response, elevated heart rate, cortisol spike, simply by walking back into that room.
The practical problem the amygdala hijack creates is one of timing. The decisions made during peak amygdala arousal, the email sent in anger, the words said in a confrontation, the impulsive choice made under pressure are not the decisions the prefrontal cortex would have made if it had been fully online. Research by neuroeconomist Antonio Damasio has shown that people with amygdala damage lose the ability to make good decisions even with intact reasoning ability because they no longer have the emotional signal system that normally helps prioritize choices. The amygdala is not the enemy. The timing of its activation is the problem.
The intervention that consistently reduces amygdala reactivity is respiratory-controlled slow breathing, specifically extending the exhale, activates the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic nervous system, which counteracts the sympathetic arousal state. Research from Stanford's Huberman lab has documented that a physiological sigh, 2 quick inhales followed by a long exhale, produces the fastest reduction in physiological stress markers of any breathing technique tested. The mechanism doesn't require belief, it works by direct neurobiological action.
The most important thing to understand about the amygdala hijack is that it is not a character flaw. It is a feature of the human nervous system that served the species well for most of its history. What changes when you understand the mechanism is this. The next time you feel the hijack starting, the heart rate rise, the narrowing of focus, the impulse to react immediately, you know that your prefrontal cortex has 20 to 30 minutes to wait before it is fully back online. And waiting in that case is not weakness, it is neuroscience. Subscribe, next video, how your brain builds and breaks habits and why willpower has almost nothing to do with it.